All right, you know what happens when you give me a mic. We'll be here all day. Welcome, good afternoon, my fellow Michiganders. Good afternoon, my fellow Americans. It's just coming into this place. We've spoken here many, many times. It brings back a lot of memories. And every time I hear that history of how this movement started, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, it always gives me the chills. Because we've been through a lot. We really all have, over the last 4 years especially. And that's why I'm here today, is to keep you inspired, to keep you motivated, but most importantly, keep you activated. You know, we had Jim Jordan come out to Grand Rapids on Monday, and he made some really great statements, because when you listen to the guy speak, he's one of us. And that's what you have to always remember. This country was founded with people like yourselves. It's ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's what we have to remember. You have to stay involved, you stay engaged, you stay activated, because the Dems, look, we got them up against the ropes right now, don't we? It's halftime in this race. And anyone that's familiar with sports is you can't let up during halftime. You always play like you're 7 points down. And that's the mentality that you have to bring to the table over the next 4.5 months. Because literally, this little idea called America is at stake. And we all feel it. We feel it into our hearts, we feel it in our very souls, that this is it. And it's not from our doing. It's not like we have to come up with new policies and everything else. The Democrats have burned this country to the ground. So it's our job to continue to have these conversations, to continue to share things, get behind your candidates, because the middle's starting to awaken. Because I said this time and time again, it's not like the country's doing great. People are struggling to put food on the table. People are starting to get 2 and 3 jobs to be able to pay the bills. People are concerned that their parental rights are being taken away and stripped away, right? These are things that are kitchen table issues that the middle are very passionate about. So we just got to allow the Democrats to continue to do what they do, and that is run this country in the ground. But what we have to do as a party, what we have to do as Americans, is to stay united. We have to unite. Divided we fall, united we stand. That very quote means more today than it ever has before, because we are one election cycle away from losing this republic. So don't ever think that you can't make a difference. That's one thing that you all taught me over the past 4 years, is that you can. The power of one can always lead to the power of many. So don't you think that you can't, because you never know what one conversation, a phone call, a door knock, sharing a post that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. You are that powerful. Remember that. Anchor that into your heart, into your very soul. Anyone have any questions for me about anything? Anybody want to ask a question? You guys have been watching.
What are you going to run for?
What am I doing? I am going to say that's a bad question. See, that's stumped me on that one. And as of right now in this election cycle, I am not running for anything. I'm going to be helping other great Republican candidates up and down the ticket. And thank you for asking that question, because it leads down to a very important point. When President Trump gets in November, it doesn't mean our job stops, right? You guys have to understand that God has put you all in this moment for a reason. We have a knockdown, drag-out fist fight in the phone booth over the next decade. So you can't just pick up your ball and go home after this election. We have to continue to activate. We have to continue to take back all levels of government, because they have been doing this to us for decades, folks. They have infiltrated every level of our office. And so everyone, please stand up. Give a big round of applause. Let's get those signs going for Mr. Governor.
Thank you very much. I'm Doug Burgum, Governor of North Dakota, but I want to make sure you meet a very special person. She's standing in the back there. She's going to wave her hand. The First Lady of North Dakota, Catherine. Hey, how fun to be here. Let me lead with gratitude, as I always do, but I want to just say thank you to Kelly and Tom and Garrett and everybody that's here, and all of you, because as Catherine and I like to say, what you're experiencing, what you've created right here, coming together like this, it's the best of America. And why do I say it's the best of America? Because you're here for one reason. You care about this country. You care about our future. You're here because you care about your kids and your grandkids. You care about your communities. You're all the people that have been involved in your communities. You've been job creators. You've been involved. You've raised your families. You've worked with the schools. You've given back to your communities. That's what you've done, and you're concerned about where the country's going. That's why you're here. And this is why America works. Is because people like you that take the time. You chose to be here. By being here today, you've given the gift that's irrevocable. You've given the gift of your time to be here together. And on behalf of Catherine and I, we want to just say thank you to all of you, because what you're doing is making a difference. And of course, I think you know how important Michigan is. And it's going to come down to a very close race. Of course, President Trump won here in 2016 by a very narrow margin, lost by a narrow margin. And we've talked separately about winning and losing in 2020 because there were some irregularities, of course, during COVID. But I want to just say it's going to take every one of you to make a difference. And I want to say America's counting on you, because Michigan is likely going to be the state that determines the election, and it could be in counties like this, and votes from your own neighbors that are going to make the difference. So you guys are the tip of the spear. You're the opportunity here. You're the best of America, but you have an opportunity to save America. So on behalf of all of us, give it up for yourselves one time. You guys are amazing. And I think, again, I want to just be clear. People probably think, hey, I'm here and I'm, supporting President Trump because I'm, this guy's, he's trying to, he's a politician. He wants a job in the administration. He wants something else. Let's be very clear. I was in the private sector right up until the exact same day that President Trump got elected. And Catherine and I had made a decision. I grew up in a small town of 300 people in North Dakota. It wasn't a job that I had all the way through college that I took a shower before I went to work. I had jobs where I took a shower after the day was done, working on the farm, the ranch, the grain elevator, construction. That's what I grew up doing, was working, and it didn't seem weird because every other kid in my hometown was doing the same thing. And then I had an opportunity. I grew up in a town that didn't even have a computer. I had an opportunity because of this great America to get involved in a software startup after I was just out of college a few years. And my dad was a World War II Navy vet and passed away when I was a freshman in high school. That was hard. But from him, I got a small amount of farm ground, some acres in North Dakota, not enough to farm on, but I literally mortgaged that farm acres. And so I literally bet the farm. You're looking at a guy that literally bet the farm to start a software company when nobody knew. Exactly. The opportunity that could create it here. And so I had a chance to, there were 10 of us at the beginning, 10 kids from small towns. We built that into a 2,000 person company. We had 1,200 in Fargo, 400 rest of North America, 400 rest of the world. I had customers and partners and team members living in countries where they didn't have the right to vote, they didn't have the right to free speech, didn't have freedom of religion, certainly didn't have the right to bear arms. So when I was a kid, I got a chance to see just how amazing America was. I got to see what my dad, the greatest generation, had fought for. And I developed a real appreciation for that. And so after I was leaving the private sector, we were giving back to communities, and we got involved. I was like, well, I'm trying to help the rural high school where I went, and I'm like, I could write a check to those guys, the biggest one they'd ever seen, because we had success in our private sector business. But I'm like, wow. I could do that. What's the state spending on education? What's the Fed spending on education? I'm like, wow, look at what they're spending. I said to Catherine, I came home one day and said, hey, maybe we should run for governor. And she's like, what? Why? We've got a great life. Why would we do that? And I was like, said, well, look, we should maybe think about giving our time. Because all the philanthropy we do wouldn't be a drop in the bucket compared to what the government was spending. And now today that's even more different. So we got into it, and we in North Dakota we didn't have term limits. We got them passed while I was in office here at the ballot box. But we could have run for a third term in our state, could have kept on going. But we made a decision last January that we said, hey, we should endorse President Trump, and we should spend our time trying to help get him elected. Why? Because in our state and in this country, we were so much better off under President Trump than we were in the direction with Joe Biden. And that's part of the reason I jumped in and ran for president last year, because I was running against Joe Biden. I was running against his policies because it was crushing our state. And one of the things we know that is affecting every one of you and everybody, it's inflation. And what's inflation? It's around energy and food are the two biggest things. What does North Dakota do? We are a huge energy producer and we're a huge food producer. We feed and fuel the world, and we also got a big defense network with our two huge air bases. And Joe Biden was attacking the U.S. military defense structure. He was attacking U.S. energy. He's trying to crush our agriculture, because agriculture today is also about fuel. I mean, soybeans are about biodiesel and corn is about ethanol. So he was literally trying to crush our economy, and then Catherine and I said, let's do that. And so anyway, so we jumped in. The most important thing, it doesn't matter who he picks to be on the ticket. President Trump needs to win. That's the most important thing. That's why we're here today, is to make sure that that happens. And it's why all of you are here today. And I just want to say again how important this is, because Joe Biden is wrong on China. He's wrong on the border. He's wrong on the economy. And I'm just not talking I'm not talking as someone who's just a politician. I'm talking as someone who, in our state, our little state, I think, well, there's a few people left that don't have my cell phone number in our whole state. It's like, in a small state, I mean, every cafe, every time we go down the street, I mean, people know me, they call me, they text me, whatever. I know what Americans are feeling right now. I know what our farmers are feeling, our ranchers, people that are working in the oil and gas, people that get up every day to do, make sure we got enough electricity to run this country. And the policies of Joe Biden, particularly around this climate extremism that they're doing, they think that's more important than everything. And let me just explain. We are in two wars right now. We're in a war, we're in two proxy wars, one with Russia and one with Iran. Those wars, Russia is funding their side of the war with their oil revenues. Iran is funding their war and funding over 27 terrorist groups with their oil revenue. President Trump had both those countries. He had Iran on their knees financially. They were down to almost nothing, less than $10 billion of cash that country had, because he put in sanctions that actually worked. And now, what's Joe Biden? Let's give Iran $6 billion for 5 hostages. Let's unfreeze assets. Let's release the oil sanctions. Those guys have made so much money. They're up to 3.5 million barrels of oil a day in Iran, funding terrorism. And then we argue about what do we have to do to support our allies like Israel with dollars from Congress. Under Joe Biden, we're funding two sides of two wars. We're funding the other side and this side. And then you know what oil production in North Dakota is? It's down since Joe Biden took office. He is fighting U.S. energy and supporting our adversaries. They're getting rich off his policies. When Joe Biden says we're going to put a pause on liquid natural gas exports because they're concerned about climate effects, natural gas is the thing that has helped lower CO2 emissions in our country and the world more than any other thing. And they got to study it. It's the thing that's helping reduce emissions are the problem. Let's have more clean U.S. natural gas. Let's have more of it, not less of it. There's nothing to study. When he announced that, I said to Catherine, I said, there's a party in the Kremlin tonight. Forget the Manchurian candidate. There's a Manchurian policymaker, because Joe Biden's energy policy, I don't know if they're from Venezuela, Iran, Russia, or China, because those are the 4 countries that benefit the most from his energy policies. And then he's got a solution. We're going to go all EV. Okay, that's the solution, okay? You folks know North Dakota may be a little colder than Michigan, but you actually have winter here. And you understand these don't work well in cold weather. That doesn't happen. They don't work for heavy loads. They're not going to work for a BNSF train running across the northern plains. They're not going to work for airplanes. We need liquid fuels. And liquid fuels is Team USA. Batteries is Team China. They control 85% of the rare earth minerals. And a battery is essentially the engine. So then we're going to kill the U.S. auto industry. We're going to kill that, and we're just going to buy not just our batteries, because we end up buying our cars from China. You know what China is? China is the world's largest polluter. They are opening up a coal plant, 2 a month, And Joe Biden wants us to buy our batteries from them. And so, I mean, it is the whole thing to me is just economic martyrdom for, chasing some climate extremism that makes no sense, because if you actually cared about the environment, you would want to have every drop of liquid fuel, you'd want to have every electron when you flip on the lights come from the United States, because we produce it cleaner, safer, and smarter than anyone else. So Joe Biden's policy, when you shut down our industry and you get Iran and Venezuela to pick it up, that's bad for the environment. So his policies, bad for our economy, bad for working families, bad for inflation, bad for the environment, and they help our adversaries. Other than that, I think it's perfect. It's everything's great about it. So it is like I just literally get up every day and I can't understand what he's doing, and so that or the team that's around him. It is so important. If we literally, this election is so important because we have to go back in a direction where we say, look, for when America is strong, the world is safe and prosperous. We've got leaders around the world that are talking to President Trump. When they come to the United States now, some of them have come, they don't even go to the White House. They come and they want to meet him. And we got this fake lawfare thing going on. I was with him at the trial, and we have CNN and fake news saying like, oh, the president is seething. I'm in the room with him on the break, and he's talking to some of the biggest business leaders in the world. He's getting ready to have dinner with a prime minister from a foreign country. Then he's going to go to a fundraiser after that, all after he's had to sit in court the whole day. And then he's going to make phone calls till midnight. It is unbelievable. I've known CEOs in the private sector. I knew CEOs that were running startups. I was a CEO at a startup. I thought, how could you work possibly harder than that? This guy works so hard, and he doesn't have to do any of it. I mean, he could be playing golf, he could be hanging out, but from the day that he's decided that he wanted to run for office, they've been coming after him. They're so frustrated that they haven't been able to take him out. But that guy cares deeper now than he did when he first ran in 2015. When he is on a mission to help save this country. I know that all of you understand that, but I tell you, if anybody in this country got to see him, what Catherine and I have seen the last 6 months, we knew him when we were governor. Well, I endorsed him in the spring of 2016 and never met him. I just was like, hey, a business guy in the White House, that would be great. That was my whole view then. Then we got to know him when we were governor, and we had this fantastic relationship. And Catherine tells her own story, but Catherine is celebrating 22 years in recovery. So thank you, Catherine, for sharing your story about that. Catherine, the disease of addiction touches every family, every community, every job. She struggled with addiction for 2 decades and then was in recovery and didn't say a word about it for 15 years. Then we got into office and she said, hey, I've got to talk about this. And she started talking about it. She's changed lives. She saved lives. But President Trump, of course, lost a brother to disease of addiction many years ago. The guy, doesn't ever have a drink. When he won that night, he won in Iowa, and we were with him. And in the last minute, he says, "Hey, why don't you fly with us to New Hampshire? I know you're coming there to campaign." We said, "Sure." And I thought, wow, they've been saying for a year and a half that Trump can't come back. He cannot come back. There's no way. All the negative news for a year and a half. He can't. They're doing the indictments. They're doing everything to stop him. He wins 98 out of 99 counties in Iowa that night. Historic win, largest victory of anybody in a multi-candidate primary. And he was and we were the first of the candidates to drop out to endorse him. We got to be on stage with him that night. It's so exciting. But you think, wow, someone is has that worked that hard for 18 months and you have that big of a victory. You think they're going to take a little time and celebrate. You'd think that, right? And we're just getting to know him on a personal level, not on the governor to president level. And he says, "Come on, jump on Trump Force One. We're all going back, to the East Coast." So we get on there, and it's midnight in Iowa when we're leaving. 2.5-hour flight. Nobody turns off the lights. Nobody sleeps. He's got a stack of papers like 12 inches high. He's making phone calls from the plane, he's signing papers, they're working on stuff, they're getting ready for New Hampshire. He works the entire way, and guess what? When he's working the entire way, there's 40 other people on that plane. None of them are gonna close their eyes. Boss is working, they're working. Everybody's working, so the work ethic, the professionalism on this team is amazing. And again, there's not one alcoholic beverage on that whole thing. Everybody's about getting the job done for the American people. That's what they're doing. But of course, we did take a bit of time to have a fine meal served of cold McDonald's. So anyway, that was that. And then we're off and hit the ground. The next day, and then the next night the next day we went to New Hampshire. He had to go sit in court. He had to do whatever. He came up, and the next night he's in New Hampshire, and it's 10 o'clock at night the next night, and he's talking to a huge rally and a fundraiser in New Hampshire the next night. So it's just unbelievable the energy that he's got and how he's moving this thing forward. And he's curious. He's asking questions. I've been with him in Silicon Valley. I've been with him energy leaders. I've been with them and people on the East Coast that are, job creators and people from the finance industry. And every time I'm in one of those, he's just asking people questions and trying to understand, what's in the way, what's the red tape, what can we cut. So I just want to bring a message from Catherine and I personally that the last 6 months, we thought he was terrific when I was the governor, he was the president. But right now, I know that he's the guy that can get this done for our country. You all know that too, and I can't, believe the number of things that get said. I sat in that trial for a day, and then the next morning I'm flying back to North Dakota, and I'm getting on Delta, and they got now in the seat backs you get live TV. And it's 6 in the morning, early flight out, turn the thing on, CNN's reporting about the trial. And I'm like, I must have been in a different trial. Because everything they're saying about what went on yesterday is not what I saw with my own eyes. I'm a guy that likes to get ground truth, and I can tell you the same thing. I shouldn't have been surprised. I've been down to the border more times than Harris or Biden have been. We've had North Dakota troops down there the entire time that Biden's been in office, trying to help out either in small sectors, or also we had a group of our National Guard that was flying Lakota helicopters from San Diego to the Gulf Coast, trying to stop these the cartels, these transnational criminal organizations that are flooding our country with crime and with overdoses. I mean, we've lost the equivalent of 5 Vietnams of deaths since Joe Biden took office. 330,000 Americans have died, and 70% of those are fentanyl poisonings. And so we not only have a mass invasion going on, we've also got mass casualties that we're taking. There's one person that can get that border shut, and that's President Trump. He'll do that on the So I just want to close out again with thank you here. And maybe if we got enough time, take a couple questions. Does that work or not? Yes, no, or you guys got to get going? Okay, all right, I got a little time if you guys want to do that, but I just want to close out again with gratitude, because this, between now and this fall, it's really not this fall, is like, because we've all got to do our part. Everybody's got to do their thing, and this is a thing where if every Republican in America votes for President Trump, every single one, we're more united than we ever have been. President Trump, when he was in D.C. last week, record number of senators standing alongside of him, goes and meets with all the congressmen that are there. We got important congressional races going on right here in our state, or in Michigan right here, that we need to win. He committed to do 100 teletown halls for congressmen and senators. 100. I've sat with him when he's done these things. They do a dial-out thing where they dial out numbers, cell phone and home numbers all over the state. Maybe some of you guys have had that happen. I was on with one of them in Iowa, and they dialed out to like 300,000 numbers. He's committed to do 100 of those. I mean, he's doing his part, but we got to go out and knock on doors. If every Republican in this country votes for President Trump, guess what happens in November? We lose. We need every Republican, and we need people that have not voted Republican in the past. We got to get independents. We need all the Republicans. So if you have Republicans that have got concerns about President Trump, a question that I'd like to ask them is, well, are you voting for Joe Biden? I mean, what's your alternative here? I mean, and you have to look at the alternative and say, you're that? I mean, because we got someone who's obviously struggling. I've seen it personally when I've I went most recently when I was with them and President Biden, I was at the White House with 42 governors in February, and that was, it was just clear. I mean, you can't meet with 42 governors. When Trump was governor and the annual governor association would come in, he would come in and he would do Q&A like we're gonna do, like nothing's prearranged, not whatever, like who's got a question, I'll take the question. That's what he would do with 42 governors, knowing that half of them are Democrats, and that this year at the the National Governor Association, we were told that the 42 governors that attended could ask 2 questions. One from the chair, who was a Democrat, and one was the vice chair, I guess it was the other way around. Spencer Cox was the chair. We got 1 Republican question, 1 Democrat, and they had a 3-ring binder with and the questions had to be presented 2 days in advance. I mean, that's, let me just say, as a business guy, and if you were on the board of directors, if any of you were on the board of directors of a family business, on the board of directors of a regional business, if you're on the board of directors of a Fortune 500 company, as a board member, would you sign up Joe Biden to be your CEO for another 4 years? No, there's not a company in the country that would sign him up for 4 years based on what you can just visibly see with your own eyes.
Maybe depends.
There we go. Yeah. That's a good one. Well, I don't think CEO, I think spokesperson. She said the people that sell the pens, maybe that they could be, he could be a spokesperson. But yeah, it's not a, it's just sort of a pragmatic thing. So I think when we're out, each of you, in addition to knocking on doors and volunteering and helping out, whether you've got an hour, whether you've got 10 hours, or whether you're retired and you can help even more than that, I know that, Kelly, others here, we can figure out a way to put pieces of work to do this, making phone calls, doing that, whatever. But I think the other thing to think about is what I would call attraction as opposed to promotion. Because promotion is you're trying to convince someone to vote for Trump that's already made up their mind they're never going to do it. I think part of it is just telling your own story like I did. Why are you voting for President Trump? Why do you think he's the right thing? And think about your own reasons on why you're doing that. Is it because you're concerned about crime, concerned about inflation, concerned about the border, concerned about our future? And think about who do you know in your network that has not been a Trump supporter in the past, and give them your personal testimony. That's what we need. That's part of this grassroots message, because if they're sitting around all day long watching CNN or watching MSNBC, and I can tell you from personally having been on the ground and then watching what they report, and they're 2 different things, they're going to have to hear it from you. People get persuaded by their neighbors and people they trust, and I know a lot of us have felt like our networks have shrunken in the last few years as the nation's got more divided. I think a huge percentage of Americans have even lost friends over this thing. But I think we have to get comfortable in talking to people that are not, all in the same room and all thinking the same thing. We've got to get some of them to come over. And in Michigan, we need them to win the state. So if I was going to challenge all of you to do one thing at the same time in gratitude, is figure out a way to talk to people that aren't Trump voters and explain to them why you're voting for Trump. And if you can do that, it could be a gift to our whole country. So with that, I want to say again, thank you, and I'll take a few questions, but thank you, guys have been fantastic. You can shout out your name and a question, that'd be great.
Tim Brown, Kalamazoo. Welcome again to Kalamazoo County, which is a blue square on a red background when you look at the elections. So Kalamazoo can make the difference, especially in a state like Michigan, where it's right on the edge anyway. So we are the tip of the spear, you said. So thank you for pointing that out. Now, the debate is scheduled prior to the Democrat convention. Is that because they're waiting for Biden to crash and burn so they can replace him?
The question earlier here is, this is unusual. There's never been a presidential debate that's been scheduled before a convention. And Tim's question is one that's been on everybody's mind, was that scheduled to create an opportunity for the Democrats to switch out to another candidate if Biden has a
moment.
A poor performance. So I think that personally, I don't know what's going on inside the Democrat strategy mind, because I'm not sure why you would be like in a year when the entire nation is like, we've got a border problem, that you're like announcing this week that, hey, we're gonna provide amnesty for another 500,000, or when people think it's patently unfair, when, you know, when many of you or your kids or someone like me work to pay off our college student loans, that somebody else gets them forgiven. I mean, which is highly inflationary and highly unfair to the sibling that, you know, got a job and paid him off. You know, he's like doubling down on stuff that doesn't make any either economic sense, or it sort of cuts at the root of American fairness and the rule of law. So I can't, for me to try to explain what they're thinking would be impossible, because like I just think everything they do seems 180 degrees wrong to me. But this could be a very real possibility that they're trying to give themselves a bite at the apple. I think the other thing which is real is that if you've got somebody who's in decline, you know, they're saying, oh, voting starting in September, we can't do debates in the fall. I think they're like, hey, let's get these things done earlier, when they can, you know, get them done earlier. I love the fact that, you know, President Trump, I think the first time I heard it was in Minnesota, where he said, hey, I think I'm gonna call for a drug test. I mean, it's probably a reasonable thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing actually unfolds, and I think there's, you know, some percentage of chance that, you know, maybe they figure out a way for Biden to bail out of this thing. They've got some ripcord or something, who knows? Right now, I know President Trump and the whole team is planning on, you know, getting ready for this debate. Catherine and I will be down there the day before through the day after. A number of other, the other surrogates will be there as well, because we got the whole team together. It's an important day, certainly an important day for this election, but it'll be interesting to see if they try to go to another candidate. I don't know. They have a huge set of complications. Because part of, you know, what Joe Biden's foreign policy right now, particularly as it relates to the Middle East, is they've got Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. I mean, they're trying to figure out which side, are they on the side of the terrorists or on the side of the U.S.? You know, they've got big problems within their own party, and I don't know how they would work through a convention. We'll see. Whoever they put up, President Trump is going to win on the issues, because you change out Joe Biden, that solves one thing, but it doesn't solve the fact that all of the policies are so bad for our country and they're so good for our adversaries. The Biden policies. Thank you. Sir, right there.
Yeah, I'm Rob Richardson, Vicksburg, Michigan. I'm a farmer, and I've had the pleasure I got an energy question, but I've had the pleasure to be out in the Mondac region between Sydney and Wilmington. And we were on a tour for high yield identity preserved wheat, so I really enjoyed that area of the country. The energy question that I have is maybe to raise the awareness, because where we use battery as a dirty word, well, here in Michigan, we have an 838-acre battery disguised as Ludington pump storage. So I think when we get past the silliness of windmills and solar panels, and we really look at sustainable energy, if you match that Ludington pump storage, our 838-acre battery, with small modular reactors, SMRs, I think you can really have a combination there that just be one piece of the puzzle of energy independence for the country. So if you could bring that up to President Trump, that concept, I sure would appreciate it.
Well, I'd be happy to do it, because you know, and I love the way you're talking about battery, because when you got water behind a dam that hasn't gone through the generator, that's a battery. I mean, it's just stored, you run it through, and it's a way to do that. And these small nuclear reactors, my friend Governor Mark Gordon in Wyoming, those guys are taking the lead on some of this. Those things, when I say small, I mean they might produce, you know, 10 megawatts as opposed to like a power station that might do 1,200. You know, so you need 120 of those to equal a typical, you know, baseload power station. But those things could be very valuable. Places like remote villages in Alaska, every one of our military bases around the world could be using those, because particularly right now, and I hate to be bearer of bad news, but we are in an electricity crisis right now that was self-inflicted by Biden's policies. We're prematurely shutting down baseload all over the country because they're saying, just piling on regulations. In North Dakota, we're fighting 30 different rules and mandates. None of them are from the Department of Energy. It's from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Reclamation, Army Corps of Engineers, EPA. The list goes on and on and on. And when we shut down baseload, at the same time, we've got artificial demand going up and artificial subsidized because, oh, we're gonna pay people to buy an EV car. Here's $7,500, go buy an EV car. We're gonna subsidize 5,000 EV charging stations. States like New York are saying you can't buy a gas stove, you can only buy electric. The federal government, by a mandate, not through Congress, Joe Biden, these guys got a mandate that says every federal building has gotta go all electric. Even in states that have got, low-cost propane, clean natural gas, and a shortage of electricity, they are mandating that federal buildings go to electric, because somehow they think that that's, by just saying it's electric, it means it's somehow cleaner, which it doesn't, because we can decarbonize liquid fuels, as we're doing in North Dakota. I'm going to give you a zero-carbon tank of gas in North Dakota between ethanol and zero-carbon. We got a carbon-negative oil company in North Dakota. They put more CO2 in the ground and the barrel comes up. I mean, so if you want zero CO2, we can give you that without enslaving ourselves to China. So, but on and then of course they're against nuclear. You bring up small nuclear, they're against small, they're against large, they're against every kind of nuclear. And they say, and these folks that want to have zero carbon are against the thing that in the future would be really helpful. And of course, a nuclear, people say, hey, we're really afraid of nuclear. Okay, just a quick stat on that, because I'm obviously for nuclear. And people said, wow, you're for nuclear? Would you ever live by a nuclear plant? I said, yes, I would. And they said, well, how would we know that? Would you ever live there with your family? I said, yeah, I would have my family live near one. And they said, well, but wouldn't it be a lot of risk? I said, well, my kids grew up on a farm in North Dakota, and we lived right next to a road. And they said, what does that have to do with anything? I said, well, we kill 45,000 people a year on roads in America, and we've killed 0 in 60 years on nuclear plants. So I'll take my chance on the thing that's killed like 3 million less than roads. I mean, I don't know, you guys had kids. The thing I worried about when they were out going out when they were teenagers was driving. That was the thing that was always, as a parent, you were most worried about. Thankfully, they're all thriving right now, and they're all good drivers. And all that, but I'm just saying there's so many ways we can solve our problems without enslaving ourselves to an adversary and without enriching our other adversaries like Russia, Iran, or Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela, hey, we'll buy all your oil, we'll lift the sanctions, and then you empty your prisons and send them to us for an open border. I mean, it's like, I'm telling you, it's so important that all of you get out and do what you have to do, because it is not just, I mean, the most polite way is to say they're 180 degrees in the wrong direction. The more accurate thing is some of these policies are absolutely absurd. They hurt America, they help our adversaries. And then in the process, that we're bankrupting our country. But I appreciate what you're saying. We got bottom line on everything I've said about energy. Just remember one thing: innovation, not regulation. America's greatness has always been built around innovation. Whether it's small nuclear reactors, new forms of whatever, decarbonized liquid fuels. This is all the private sector and capitalism solving a problem, as opposed to a bunch of bureaucrats in Washington coming up with 10,000 pages of rules about what we're supposed to do in North Dakota when they've never set foot there. And then they're telling us they care more than what the 4th and 5th generation farmers and ranchers that control 90% of the land in our state, just like they do in many other states. All of you, you're a farmer, sir. I don't think anybody in DC cares more about your land than you do. You care about the soil health, the water quality, the air, the products you produce.
We're the first conservationists.
Yes,
Very important.
yes. So let's get it back to the people and make it work. But anyway, thank you for that great question. I'll take it for like 1 or 2 more. I'll go here and then to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Governor. Your state has a unique banking system, the only one in the country. North Dakota has been a bellwether in recessions when the other country is doing. It's always been new and great. Based off those economic situations that your state is unique on, any chance we could get somebody from your state to be the Federal Reserve Chairman?
Well, it's fun that you know about that. North Dakota is the only state. What's?
Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, the question was, North Dakota is the only. We have, he said, a unique banking system, and we're thriving economically. Could we get someone from North Dakota to run the Federal Reserve? I'm smiling about that. I'm not nominating myself, but I did serve on a Federal Reserve advisory board 30 years ago when I was a kid, so I've got a pretty good sense of how the Fed works. But it is a fact that we're the only state that has a state-owned bank, which would seem like, wow, why do you have a state-owned bank? Well, back just over 100 years ago in the 1920s, our state was all settled by immigrants that came from Norway and Sweden and many from Germany. That's why our capital is named Bismarck. That was an economic development ploy to change the name of the capital to Bismarck, and then we had towns named Strasbourg and Berlin and a bunch of other names and it worked. A bunch of Germans moved there. And they all became farmers. So we got all these Northern Europeans that are there doing that. Well, then guess what they were doing? They were producing a lot of wheat, not identity preserved, but they were producing a lot of wheat, but there was no banks and there was no mill, and they were just getting taken advantage of by everybody down in the Twin Cities. Pillsbury, General Mills, all the big milling companies were there. There was no mills in North Dakota because it's so damn flat. In those days, pre-electricity, you needed a waterfall to run a mill. It's literally, there's not a waterfall in the whole state. If you come there, it's just remarkable. I mean, between where I grew up on a farm in Red River Valley and Winnipeg, 225 miles north of us, it's 225 feet difference. It's a foot a mile and change. Okay, that's 1 foot for every 5,280. You can't tell if you're going uphill or downhill. I mean, the human eye cannot detect 1 foot divided a fraction, 1 over 5,280. You can't detect that thing. And I'm telling you, where I grew up, the town I grew up in, is flatter than every pool table in any bar you've ever played. I mean, you put a level on it. I mean, in a bar, and it's like, it's always like, okay, it is so flat. So anyway, these guys, there's no mill. And there's no bank, so there's a revolution, and then all the new immigrants came over and they took over. They beat the Republicans, they beat the Democrats. They created this nonpartisan league, and the first thing they said is, we're building a bank and we're building a mill. And guess who gets to be the chair of the bank and the mill? The governor of the state of North Dakota. So as a capitalist, my whole life, now I'm chair of a state-owned bank and chair of a state-owned mill. But man, we're good at those two things, and it's made a difference. We do have the lowest unemployment in the nation. We got the highest workforce participation. We have the fastest growing GDP in the country. Our state's getting younger, not older. We used to be one of the oldest states. Now we're one of the youngest. We got the second highest birth rate in the country. And I'm a competitive guy. I mean, I like being number one. And I'm like, hey, how do we get to number one? And who's number one? And they said, Utah's number one. And I said, that's going to be tough to catch. We might have to just stick with number two on that one. But the economy is thriving in our state, and part of it is because we've got a structure. And what we do with that state-owned bank is we don't loan directly. We support our local community banks. So we didn't lose all those community banks. They're not owned by some national chain. I mean, I got nothing against the big banks, but when I got Elizabeth Warren tell me something's too big to fail, they should do what we did in North Dakota, which is, if they're too big to fail, then break them up now. Don't build a walled garden around them and give them even more opportunity to crush the little guy. Break them up now if they're too big to fail. Why are we spending our tax dollars bailing them out when you could actually have a more competitive environment, let capitalism work, have more small businesses? So we've got this thriving, every town you go into has got a different bank, and the bank president or their family or their kid is the one that's still running it all across our state. And that's really, it's helped our farmers, it's helped our entrepreneurs, it's helped everybody. So we do have a unique banking system, and it's cool. And it thinks it's NASA. I don't know how you know about North Dakota banking system. Maybe you're a rocket scientist. Maybe that's how you know everything.
This shirt makes me look smarter than I am.
Ma'am, you got a question right here.